Especially when Activision's on the other end demanding a $25 million buy-in. You can't win just based on that. Who's the best League of Legends player and how much would you pay them? And somebody off the street is going to say, well, based on how much I know other players get, this person has to make more than them, so it's 1.5 mil. And I say, is it worth it? You know, they say money isn't everything, but it's pretty. Business. I was about to say, it's pretty damn important. Yo, thank you for tuning in. This is the Game On Financial Podcast, episode number 12. We're talking about Faze stock today, why it's dropping, continuously dropping. We might get into Sentinels a little bit because they are looking to raise funds, and obviously as accountants, we can kind of speak to that and kind of what's going on in general. We've talked about orgs in the past, why they don't make money, or at least that they don't make money. We've never really discussed why. We're going to take an in-depth look today and kind of go over some of that. So
looking at numbers,
looking at actual numbers. Yay. I know everybody's excited. So, I'm your local tax guy. This is Joseph. Joseph, tell me, what do you do?
Manager at Game On Financial. We're excited to get into it today. So
awesome. So before we get too started, we generally give an update, talk about our week, but I think we'll do a question first. Let's talk about Nevermind's question. Okay. He said, not my idea, but a tweet I found. Yeah. And Brody's here. What's up, Brody? So the question is, the way he presented it, and again, it wasn't him, but it was a tweet. Why can't somebody deduct their student loans as a business expense if they have to have the loan, if they have to have the degree for a job? You have to go out and get the degree. The job requires it. Why can't you deduct it as a business expense? And I have an answer. I mean, I actually messaged him back right away, and I said, well, for one, the IRS doesn't allow it, just right. Point blank period, or Congress doesn't allow it. But two, it's an interesting concept because I can actually see what they're talking about. It's like, you got to have the degree for the job. Like, why can't I deduct it? Why don't I get some kind of benefit for going out and getting the degree that I have to get the job? So it's very thought-provoking. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
No, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question. I've never thought of that, to be honest. I guess the way I think about tax and like the way I think about individual income tax, most of the time, most people's career is W-2 based, right? Their tax return's super simple. And so really, as a simple tax return, W-2 employee, maybe you're married and both W-2 employees, you just don't get money deductions. Like it's just not a lot out there. And most people will be like, what? I bought a house. That doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as that goes, I see where it's coming from. The simple point is that you can't deduct it.
Somebody would, I guess, the Congress or the IRS and Congress would probably argue that that degree that you got could be applied to any job. So really, it's more of a personal investment than it is anything else. Because once you have those skills, you could take that and use it for anything.
And it's probably where they would come at it is that it's not required to get the job.
Yeah,
maybe you could do the job without it. Maybe you whatever. Or whatever. But
some jobs do specifically state like you have to have a bachelor's degree in X to get. Actually, sometimes they don't even say. You got to have a bachelor's degree. They don't even specify it has to be in accounting.
That's true, yeah. But you're not required technically to get loans to do that.
You're not required to get loans. Yeah,
you might have to in the place.
You have to pay for the education one way or another.
So education expense, whether it's through the loan you had to get or just paying the money, if it's $5K a year, whatever, then could you deduct that $5K? Then yeah,
it's an interesting topic. And then Nevermind says the second part of it was the way CEOs write off their private. So why can't we deduct the education expense the same way CEOs write off their private jets and yachts for their jobs, which require neither? And my retort to that is some CEOs do require jets. They require travel of some sort. Now, getting a private jet to make it faster and to expedite the process it's actually a real thing. The yacht, not so much.
Probably not. Probably not many people are deducting yachts.
And I was about to say, I think that's just like the common like myth out there that they're deducting.
Conor McGregor may be getting around it some way with that Lamborghini yacht he has, just because he's so big. I mean, maybe he somehow, but no, yeah. I mean, the jet.
Conor McGregor runs a liquor empire. He has to be all over the world for events and sightings and stuff like that.
He drives that boat across the Pacific and.
If you're gonna go, if you're gonna take the boat, like you got to get around somehow. And there's no doubt that him, Floyd, Money Mayweather, they're flying private. But the thing is like, to some extent, a lot of these CEOs, they are flying private. I know, for example, there's actually in their shareholder meeting, Warren Buffett talked about how they would never waste money on a private jet. Like to them, it was a waste because the upkeep and all that is so expensive when you get a private jet. It's not buying the jet itself, it's the upkeep. And then they ended up getting one because they had to be at X amount of events. They owned, I mean, Berkshire Hathaway owns hundreds of thousands of businesses, and they've got to get around to these businesses to do what they've got to do. And so they bought a private jet company first and foremost, and then they started using the private jet. And he said, he was like, now that we have it, I couldn't imagine a world where we didn't have it because it's so convenient to get around from where I need to go to do my job. So I don't know. I mean,
yeah, it's an interesting question posed. And I mean, I'll just say this too, from the standpoint of just deducting loans in general, right? You can't do that regardless of the type of loan. So like even with a property, right? The loan on the property is not a deduction. You don't get to deduct your mortgage or anything related, just the interest,
just
piece,
the interest,
the actual expense you're paying. So yeah, I mean, in general, it's just kind of how the tax law has been written. I don't know if it'll ever come up to be changed. I doubt it.
It won't be,
because from the government side, you're not required to do it. You might be because you want that job, but you're not required to go do that. Or required to go in debt to do that. It's his choice.
It's personal spending for the most part. Private jets for business purpose, that's one thing. A yacht maybe, but the yacht is harder to sell in my opinion. But there are situations in businesses where it's necessary to get around. That's the whole key is it ordinary and necessary to run your business? If you're a W-2 employee, you don't have a business. You're just an employee. So that right there negates any deduction you might have. That is a business expense.
There's no such thing as ordinary and necessary to do your job. That's not a thing from a tax return.
Not for a W-2 employee. And then J-Man.
He said Game One Financial should get a company jet.
We are going to a lot of events. Let's talk about that real quick. So we're going to TwitchCon. Anybody in chat that's going to be there, would love to obviously meet up and everything. We'll be at TwitchCon. You sent me the link for DreamHack recently, which we had talked about.
The tickets just came
a month ago.
Yeah.
How much were they? Did you see?
$80, I think.
Oh, that's nothing. So DreamHack Atlanta, will probably be going to DreamHack Atlanta in December. The only trick there is it's December.
It's December 15th, so it's the week before Christmas. That's going to be a busy time. That's the only reason we might be tough. Not, but yeah, we're excited to go to more events this year. It should be good.
That's going to be tough. Nevermind said I should be at both. Yeah, that's awesome. Nevermind, don't you? I think you live in Atlanta, or am I mistaken?
Atlanta's only about 4 hours from us, so
yeah,
should be cool.
So yeah, events there. What other updates do we have? Do we want to talk about General Work Week? Because mine was completely shot. I have no updates there.
Yeah, no, I mean, not really. It's been kind of a weird week. You were out of office doing personal stuff. I feel like I've been a little bit behind. Just like didn't feel great.
Pick it up.
Of the week. Yeah, I know, right?
I take off 2 days, chat. 2 days. I'm gone 2 days, and this place almost burns down.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's horrible.
We talked about this last week. When I miss time, when any of us miss time, there shouldn't be a hiccup. I don't think there was a hiccup.
We signed 2 new clients.
I was about to say, I don't think it was that bad. Our standards for what we want to get done and what's actually getting done are completely different.
Yeah, gaming updates. Yes, so World Series of Warzone is coming up in like 3 weeks in London, and Apex Champs is also in the UK somewhere. It might be in England as well, but also around the same time, early September. So excited for that. Gaming updates. Also, Modern Warfare 3 leaks came out. A bunch of people are up in arms about it because it's all good things, but
suspicious.
Every single year, what happens? We hear this stuff. Everybody gets excited.
Are you buying the game?
They get the game and then they hate it.
Are you buying the game?
I'm sure I'll buy the game
on release.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure I will. I mean, that's the thing is it's a cycle, and it's so funny to me how we work with a lot of Call of Duty creators, right? So we do see a lot of them on our timeline on Twitter, and every year, from about April or May until now, it's all hate. It's all this game sucks. Everything's negative. We hear the leaks, everything comes back positive. And it's like, man, Activision just has everybody and they just.
It's so funny. I don't want to call it gaslighting. The just mental hold Activision has on people. And they don't even realize. They'll tweet it.
They know.
Well, you would think they advocate that they know, and then it's like, then they buy the game, and here come all the YouTube videos of.
I saw. I think
it's the same thing.
I think it was Lucci. I saw his tweet. It was maybe yesterday or today, and he was like, "Shit, I'm excited for Modern Warfare 3."
Somebody said something about hope, and it was they were saying the same thing. It's like, I'm trying to not have hope and.
I mean, it all sounds like good changes. I hope they do it. I mean, I think from the start it was going to be they were teasing the old maps from Modern Warfare 2. Hopefully they all come out. I mean, with the new game, it'd be cool.
That's what Nevermind is saying. And I saw that. What was it, 16? I think it's 16 maps from MW2, which are just all the maps that were there, which
only reason
I brought this up, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
You're good.
I brought this up to somebody. I can't remember whose chat I was in, but does that kill the nostalgia? Because I have a fond memory of all those maps, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, if they bring this game back, and now, like, you know, they're bringing back probably slide canceling, all the movement that everybody wants, and that's fine, but these maps aren't going to play like that. And if they screw up spawns, rank's going to suck. So, like, we're going to have these negative views of these maps that we love now because they jacked up the spawns. Now they're bringing back the classic radar. Yeah. So that's good. Classic mini map.
I will say this. I think the maps work when the pace of play is similar. And what I mean by that is you can't play an old school Black Ops 2 map with like the pacing of like Vanguard or like Modern Warfare 2019. It doesn't really work.
It's just different. Yeah.
Like Cold War, they brought back Raid, they brought back Standoff, and the pace of play was pretty similar. Yeah. There was sliding, and in Black Ops 2 there wasn't sliding, but the pace of play was similar, so the maps worked actually really well. Yeah. And the remake was like the map was exactly the same. Like it was almost exactly identical, so it worked. I don't know how it will, like you said, if in the new game it's similar to Modern Warfare 2 2022 when we just played, and the pacing's different, but the map's the same. It might play differently. So
yeah. What's your favorite Call of Duty game? Brody wants to know.
Probably Black Ops 2.
So
Black Ops 2.
I really like. I was going to say Black Ops 1, and the reason was. Well, give me your reason first. Black Ops 2. So
that was the most nostalgia. I played zombies on that a ton, then just the quick scoping. Black Ops 2 was just like, man, the maps were good. I don't know. It's just the one I played the most. That's where I got hooked. Like,
yeah. So I got hooked. Same thing. I played a ton of zombies. It wasn't so much really quick scoping, but multiplayer was incredible on Black Ops 1. So Modern Warfare 2 was when I really started playing Call of Duty, and then when Black Ops came out, I was like somewhat entrenched by that point, and Black Ops was like a fresh start, new game, but I'm not like brand new to the series, the title. Mm-hmm. So Black Ops 1 for me is that nostalgia piece that you're referring to. It's not like from truly an experience standpoint. Like I think Black Ops 2 multiplayer was probably better, honestly, but just when I think back, like the fond memories and everything, Black Ops 1 was just, it's just great.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, there's so many good CODs. I feel like the past few have like made it sad. I mean, I really like Cold War. That was a good one. But you know, I know that wasn't a fan favorite.
I was about to say you were the one of the only ones. CS2.
I've never been big into Counter-Strike. Yeah. I like watching the comp because it's like so exciting. Some of the plays that those guys can make. But I've never played it actually. Yeah. The old one and I mean the new one. I'm sure it will be exciting to come out. I mean, I watch streamers play it all the time, and some of our creators, but
yeah, I was about to say we have creators that kind of dive over into Counter-Strike, but we don't have a Counter-Strike main probably that I know of. So no, it's just I've never been. We advocate for being in the scene. I think when it comes to almost every game, I mean, we have people who are in the scene. Probably the ones that we don't have were a scene that I would like to be more involved with is probably like Valorant, CS:GO, because like those about the same. So.
For sure. J-Man, I played Overwatch for the first time on Sunday, Overwatch 2. It was fun. We need to run it. There's a lot going on. I was like trying to learn all the different people. What do they call in that game? Heroes, maybe? I don't remember. But yeah, it was a lot. Yeah. It was a lot going on.
It's too many moving parts. I watched J-Man play at one time, and I was like, what is happening?
It's just a lot going on. I mean,
J-Man doesn't heal.
You already know I was shooting people. I mean, I was getting it done.
Yeah, okay, here we go. J-Man wasn't healing anybody. That was the whole reason their team was losing. Brody, all right, so one more question, then we'll move on to the topic. Brody said Rainbow Six Siege. Probably not. Well, I mean, if we sign clients, if we have people who are in the space, then yeah, but as far as like playing it ourselves, I just never got involved with Siege.
No, me neither.
Dude, we talked about this. We'll reiterate it again because we went and had lunch. We had this conversation. I can't game hop, and I know you can't either.
We're too competitive, man. We were just talking about this. Like I
want to play a game.
I want to be so good at the game that I have to just grind it in order to be good at it. That I don't like switching games because then what happens? J-Man's like, yo, let's play Overwatch. I go play Overwatch. I'm terrible at it because I've never played it, and then I get pissed and I just want to get off. So. I get entrenched in one game and I just want to grind it. And it's just a competitive nature thing. I don't know any other way to explain it.
I'm the same way. So let's hop into the topic. Let's talk about Faze. We could probably do this pretty quick.
Before we do it, I just want to say one shout out, because with the news of the week, I mean, we got on the gaming topic, but with the news of the week, the new kick signings. I mean, we talked about two episodes ago.
What am I doing?
All the new kick deals, and we kind of prefaced it perfectly, because literally this week they dropped their first class of recruits, and then it was like 20-something people, I think.
It's been somewhat known. I think we kind of have an unfair advantage in knowing some of the creators who were previously signed to kick, and so we've in talking with people, we knew it was coming, but I didn't know to that extent. I mean, they signed, what was it, 33? Did you say 33 creators?
I don't know exactly how many it was. I don't know if it was over 30.
I think it was over 30, and because they have the graphic out on Twitter, and you can go look at it. But I mean, that's crazy. Somebody else released that they are willing to pay select partners from Twitch $150K a year to switch over.
You know what's interesting? So on that, I'm glad you brought that up.
Here we go.
I saw an article from Deserto about, it was a clip that Train was talking about, Trainwreck's on his stream, and he was saying that people are actually like over exaggerating and inflating the numbers of the deals that they got, and it's actually screwing over their negotiations. Because
You're kidding.
People are like saying that they got, let's call it 500K. I'm just random number here, and they're saying that, and then so-and-so bigger streamer than this streamer who's saying it is like, well, why didn't I get this? Or I want at least this amount. And they're like, he didn't get that. Like that's why he's saying it, is because it's wrong. And so he's actually basically saying it's actually hurting their negotiations with new signees. So that's interesting, because I think nowadays, it's all about hearsay, and like you might hear, oh dude, they got signed on for $1 million contract, but it may not have happened.
That is, and I know that I think it was Paulie. Paulie was on an interview with Big E, and said that Doc wants 50 mil basically, and maybe Doc can warrant it, maybe he can't, but I just based on what XQC got and some of these other content creators, but I mean, to that point, I think it's interesting, because I think there's so much speculation on what people are getting, and it's so weird that people would lie about that because they don't have to come out and say they got anything, and I know that some streamers have kept that somewhat behind the scenes, and they just don't tell people what they're making. And again, we're kind of behind the scenes, and I've in talks with other creators and kind of knowing how a lot of these deals work just over the years, not even with Kick, but with other platforms too. I don't know. I think there's a gross misunderstanding of what people are making. I think you look at a big creator and you see them and you're like, oh, these people are making several millions. And then sometimes you look at them and you're like, man, they're probably not getting paid that much at all for only 500 viewers. I think people look at those things differently and have just completely unreasonable expectations. I think we take for granted what we know.
Well, definitely. And I'll just say this, just for maybe the viewer watching that's like kind of agrees with that, or they just don't have a clue, is like, there's also creators that are, I would say, on the smaller side of as content creator scale goes. They're on the smaller end, but they do really, really good at getting brand deals. And their income is actually up there with some creators that are a lot larger than them, because they have multiple different revenue sources, which we've talked about on the podcast quite often, but they're utilizing other sources. It's not, maybe they have 200 CCV. It's not their CCV. It's not their stream that's creating all their revenue. It's only a piece of it. Because their YouTube crushes and their TikTok crushes, and they're getting brand deals because of those platforms. And so it's really interesting, because you're not wrong when you say that people really have no clue. And even some of our clients have surprised me that we've worked with them, and I'm like, wow, they're really doing well. So
there were Facebook creators making $75K a month, and now that's pretty much all gone because Facebook's closing the program. But I mean, $75K a month, and that was for like a 12-month contract, a 1-year contract, and then just out of nowhere, the contract doesn't get re-signed. Like it's just not offered again. It's not that it doesn't get signed; it's never offered. Facebook doesn't bring it back up, and so 1 year you look at a content creator's financials and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're trying to plan like you're only thinking they're going to grow, because once you hit a certain minimum with content creation, when it comes to brand deals and stuff like that, generally every year you're probably going to grow. Like that's a reasonable expectation, maybe not a ton, but you hit that level, and Facebook and Kick and everything that's going on now, that's not the same. I think we've seen probably more like ups and downs this year. We've had creators who they were doing good, and this year they did great. We've had creators who were doing good, and this year they tapered off. We've had creators who came out of nowhere and just had a freaking crazy year. Yeah. And we had creators who were actually crushing it and fell off a cliff. You know, they took time off.
It also depends on the content too, because like certain games, you know, like
that's true
with COVID and like Warzone 1 and like a lot of creators blew up with that. And then so it's just sometimes it just depends on the game.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, when you take in totality the past probably 3 to 5 years, in factoring in COVID, you know, it's just like a whirlwind of like
it's changed a lot.
I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, but going back to the kick deals, kudos to, you know, everyone who got signed. That's awesome. I love that for them. I do not know the details on hourly rates or anything like that. I know that they said, you know, with the $150K for getting a Twitch partner to come over, I don't know if it's actually, you know, prudent to just apply that to what these creators who just got signed are making. But yeah, I mean, it's
exciting nonetheless.
It's exciting
and,
nonetheless.
I mean, congrats, like you said, to all of them. I know, like, just looking through a few of them, I didn't actually even know, and I went to go follow them because I saw it.
Yep.
And
same.
You know, some were smaller and some were bigger, and it's cool to see that they're not just attracting the biggest ones, the XQCs, the Aiden Ross, those people that kind of were the initial ones. They're trying to get a lot of people and help a lot of people, and it's just really cool to see. I think it's going to be life changing for some people. Yeah,
funny story I just thought about, and I tweeted this, but there's a content creator who is primarily a Destiny 2 streamer, and I followed him for probably over a year now, but his name's Amaze, and I think single father, works for UPS. He was working for UPS and streaming at the same time, has a decent following on Twitch. I'm talking about like last year, decent following on Twitch, makes the switch over to Kick. He just got signed to this deal. He's up there, so you can go and actually check that out. But also he's working for UPS, still has the job. UPS, their labor negotiations, they're making like $170K minimum right now if you work for UPS, when you factor in the pension and all that stuff. So I think somebody put out a good video on it and said, like, the workers are probably making about $90K in cash. Like, that's their actual W-2, and then the rest of it is their pension and health benefits, all that stuff. So $170K compensation package. And he got that. That was great for him. And then he got the Kick deal. So within like a week, the negotiations for UPS and he got a Kick deal. That's like just completely changed. Like out of nowhere, I'm like, dude, that is awesome. Like,
it is awesome. It's great to see. And I love it just because it still shows that the space is growing and there's more and more people that are growing. And, you know, when you really go in a macro view of the live streaming industry and content creation as a whole, the live streaming space specifically, you can really kind of go down a negative rabbit hole there and look at how it doesn't make a lot of money and it's a kind of a failing industry and it's only traced down and there's not a lot of new people coming to the space. But when you see stuff like this in the micro of it and like things like Kick that are popping off in these deals, it really is exciting. It's exciting for us because we're probably going to get to work with some of these people, but also just seeing growth there, it's just exciting. It's so cool.
Yeah,
and because they're creating different types of content. Some of them are gamers, some of them aren't. Some of them are just blowing up with the stake stuff. Like it's really, really cool because I mean, people's lives even just a year ago are completely different.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. So kudos Kick. Hopefully these deals keep coming and we continue to see announcements and stuff like that. We've harped about it a lot, but it's because a lot's changed. They're constantly making updates, and I feel like every week we get on here and talk, there's something new that they're doing. And so, you know, shout out to them. Shout out to the creators who just signed deals. We don't hate our Twitch content creators or our YouTube folks, but just seeing what Kick's doing in the industry is a lot of fun. So.
I actually was in somebody's Kick chat, yesterday or the day before, and I asked them if they were going to go to Twitchcon in Vegas, and then I realized, like, you're probably not going to Twitchcon in Vegas. And then I was like, well, are you still coming to Vegas? And they were like, yeah, I might go to Vegas, because I'm sure there will be a lot of people from, you know, that maybe just made the switch this year that still a lot of their friends are going to go. But yeah, I thought it was funny. I was like, yeah, that was a dumb question to ask.
J-Man said, hate Rumble. J-Man, we don't hate any platform. Wherever people getting their money, that's what we want to see.
That's right. All right, so you want to get into the topic of the day?
Yeah, let's talk about Faze.
You seem reluctant.
Yeah, I don't want to be... This one's a hard one to not be negative about. We're going to talk financials, and there's just nothing good to talk about, you know?
You and I are realists. And so we view it as these are the numbers. We're accountants too, right? We're looking at these are the numbers. We're impartial to it, right? We're not part of the company. We're not part of, we're part of the industry. And so we're just going to look at it and go through. Really what we're going to do is we're going to look at the financial statements from the past couple of years and just talk about why they are what they are and maybe why they've lost so much money. I mean, obviously we do see the public eye and all the things that have happened in public that have affected it negatively, which all of you guys have seen as well that are listening. But from a number standpoint, we're not going to harp on them. We're just gonna come to it.
Well, the numbers don't lie. The numbers are what they are, and I'll tell you. I mean, we obviously recognize Faze Clan for the massive impact they've had for I don't know how long now. I mean, decades, like a long time, like a very long time.
Decade.
At least the past decade for sure. And so when you when you look back on the impact Faze has had on the industry as a whole, in my opinion, very positive. You would probably look at them as like kind of the bad boys of the industry, and you have other, now you have a billion orgs out there, but when they're competing in everything, they've obviously been a dominant presence in Call of Duty, pretty much any
most esports
title that they try to take on and have field a competitive team. They're obviously good. They're going to compete because they have the resources. I just don't think they have the resources that people think they do. And when you go public, all of your financial information becomes public. And now that it is, we can actually take a deep dive and show people
and I think the cool thing for us and the reason why we wanted to do this for you guys is it's public, as you just said. Not a lot of people really know what the numbers mean.
No, they don't.
Hopefully we can try to convey that to you guys and show you kind of what some of the numbers may mean, and make it a little bit more simplified, because the data we're going to look at here in a minute is public. You guys can find it online just like we did. All it's going to be is on a tab. We didn't get this info from anybody, but you might not be able to just look at it yourself and understand it.
Yeah. So hit the button. Let's go. Let's dive.
Hopefully this works.
Yeah, let's
switch over. Just make sure.
Switch over. There it is.
Yep. Oh, it's blurry.
Yeah.
There it goes.
It's probably going to be relatively difficult to see. Mouse isn't working now, of course.
No,
oh, there it goes. Hold on. We're good.
You got a little delay there, son.
Yeah. A little bit of a delay. So the main thing, really, we can talk.
J-Man's proud of our transition, by the way.
You like that? Okay. I'm going to slowly scroll up. I have a delay. I can't see the screen over there, so we're going to make the best of what we got right now. But
you're good.
The main thing are the consolidated statement of operations here, and I'm actually going to switch over to my screen so I can see it a little bit better. But the main reason we're looking at this, if you look towards the bottom, Joseph, do you see?
By the way, guys, this is in the thousands, so this is not 70K and 52K. We're looking at that top number. It's 70 million.
Yeah.
So
top line for 2022, Faze brought in $70 million. Top line.
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Most people would say, man, y'all doing well.
And that's where, that's what's crazy is because everybody stops right there. Right. They look at Faze and they say, oh my gosh, this org is just crushing it. They have
everybody.
They're signing everybody.
Deals.
All these deals, signing celebrities now. Their merch obviously is going to sell relatively high compared to other orgs, so you probably compete with Optic and 100 Thieves, and that's about it. There aren't very many orgs that are going to sell that much merch, because
they also have just deals with so many people that are they're putting their merch on their other people's merch, and they're
you look at brand sponsorships, and we can break down what makes up this revenue. So there's content, brand deals, sponsorships, all that stuff. Merchandise sales.
That's the majority of it.
That's it. Yeah, and when you combine it, well, I think it's interesting to see what those pieces make up, because I don't think they sell as much merchandise as people may think. But when you factor all that in, you're like, Faze is crushing it, $70 million. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And then you get to the cost of revenues, so $55 million approximately, if we're rounding up. So they made 70, it cost them $55 million. Directly related to that revenue. Yep. So they walk away with $15 million approximately.
Yep.
Excuse me. This is where it gets bad. And this is where, honestly, you introduce bloat. And because if you look at it originally, a $15 million profit, probably pretty good, right?
Right.
And then you have this next line for almost $60 million, $59 million. And it says general and administrative expenses.
What is that, Garrett?
It's everything that's behind the scenes business operations.
It's the cost of running the business.
It's the other cost of running the business. And you may say, well, Garrett, you said the 55 above was running the business. And no, the 55 above is going to be basically A great example of this is the merchandise. So let's say you sell $100,000 in merchandise. You don't get to keep $100,000. What it costs you
$50K to get the merchandise
to get the merchandise itself. So when you buy the actual fabric, the shirts, the whatever, the hat, anything like that, all those costs, the labor to make all of it, you have to get the design embroidered on it or whatever. All those costs, those are wrapped up in that $55 million.
And that's not probably just product cost. That's probably costs related to the sponsorship income as well.
I'd be willing to bet player cost. So I would be willing to bet the player cost because the revenues are also include tournament winnings, which I think year to date this year through June 30th, they were at approximately $7 million. And I could be wrong on that.
That's all the esports combined?
All of it, yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good, right? They compete in everything. Their winnings are good. If you look at the COD scene alone, they're one of the most consistent teams there is. Yeah, there's no denying that. They placed, I think, top 3. They placed top 3 at like every major.
That's their average placing, yeah.
That's their average, yeah. So obviously they're winning for the most part. Mm-hmm. And so because the esports, the income is going into that $70 million, the cost of revenues, the player salaries are too, and their players are not cheap. If you just look at COD alone, again, those players are some of the best. That's why they're so good, is like the players that they have on their team are some of the best. Right. It's going to be the same in all. The reason they compete so well in any esport they go to is because they have the resources to just come in and buy the best talent. That's
how it works nowadays.
That's how it works. And you'll see other orgs doing it, Optics doing it, everybody's doing it, and that doesn't make FaZe right or wrong, but there's a cost to that.
Right.
And so that's wrapped up in the 55, I would guess. The 60 below it, the general and administrative, 59,436,000. That's going to be basically your CEO, your COO, your CFO, all of these people, the accounting department, all the management, all that. That's bloat. These are people that in most cases aren't driving the revenue directly, and that's why they're not in cost of revenues. Cost of revenues are the expenses you're paying that are truly driving revenue. Right. If that was all you had to pay, FaZe would be sitting in a good spot. But
$59 million.
Since going public, this was the biggest mistake. And I please don't clip that and post it on Twitter, but the biggest mistake was going public because you're introducing bloat, because the first thing that comes in, this is why FaZe Rain and all these guys have had such a big problem with this, is now that corporate culture, that's what it is right there. Right. And there's a cost associated to it.
You guys see the cost and in appropriation or in a
when you start hiring consultants and these higher ups and all these people to come in and like they need to evaluate the business and analyze and do all these things, then they don't do a single thing that moves the needle in any way, shape, or form. I present to you bloat. Below that, you have sales and marketing, impairment of content, and then you have loss from operations of $48,671,000. They lost $49 million in 2022 alone.
Yep.
This was a company that was valued at over $700 million. Everybody was stating they're going to be the first billion-dollar org in esports, and they were valued at $700 million. Would you pay $700 million to lose $50 million a year?
No,
I wouldn't either. So,
because in just a couple years, it would all be gone.
The worst news of all this is if you actually look over to the right at 2021, and if anybody's chatting right now, I apologize. I've got it pulled up.
I was checking it.
Okay, if you look over at 2021, the loss from operations there is $31,454,000. Sorry, that not only were they already losing money, but they're losing more year over year.
Right,
and they started.
They made. From 2021 to 2022, they made almost $20 million more in revenues, but they lost almost 20 million more as well. So not only did they increase revenues, which is the whole goal here, right, is to make more. They increased about $20 million, but then they lost an additional basically 40 million to get them to net, 48. Yeah.
When did they go public? We just looked it up.
I think it was July 2022.
So in July of 2022, they go public. These financials get released, all this stuff. Do you notice, or if you're putting a thought process here together and you're looking at everything, they're losing money year over year. In 2021, they lost 31 million. And honestly, they actually lost 37 million because there's another $5 million of interest expense on there. Mm-hmm. Now, the interest expense comes from debt. When you're losing money year over year, you have two options. You finance it. So you have to finance your operations, which means you go out and you get a loan. And somebody is now, you go and get a bulk of money. Yeah, so that you can continue. And that's what they did. That's why they have that interest expense down a little bit lower. That's what option A. Option B is you introduce equity. You bring somebody else in, they bring cash with them. The only thing is you lose ownership. What has been all of the drama around Faze is they were previously relying on debt. Debt's only going to do so much. You're not going to run a $31 million loss every year.
For very many years.
So you have to bring in an equity partner who can not only bring in an influx of cash, but they can bring in their management and their overhead and all these costs we just talked about.
Right.
So Faze was put between a rock and a hard place. They're losing money hand over fist. They have to do one of two things: get more debt, which they already have a ton of, or they have to introduce a new partner.
Right.
They brought in a new partner, actually a new shareholder technically, by going public. They raised a bunch of money in an IPO.
Right.
And this has been every single problem that you've seen from Faze Rain, and all the other Faze owners that have been, raising hell on Twitter, whatever. That's where this is. That's right. Exactly. And so when you're looking at this financially, this is the story it's telling, to me at least, when I look at it. Is I know that they went public in 2022. You can look at the income and expenses. You can pretty much tell why. And you may say, well, Faze is different because it's an esports org and this and that. It's like, no, it's not different from any other business. Every business is faced with these same two options when they're running losses year over year. Right. If you cannot produce profit, this is what happens. And, we talked about it the other day. Why we would never bring on another partner for what we're doing here is because we are making a profit. Why would we ever split the pie with somebody else
if there wasn't a need?
And then, ironically, if there is a need, you probably shouldn't be splitting the pie with anybody else. You should probably figure out why you're running a loss every year. Right. So in no case to us does it really make sense to do it. Now, that's not to say there is a very real world situation where you want to go public and have a big IPO, because what you're doing at a small scale, and an IPO gives you the resources to do it at a big scale, right? So like companies like Coca-Cola and stuff.
Sure.
By going public and all that and introducing stock and shares and all that, they bring in a large influx of money. Now they can open up more factories, more Coca-Cola. Right. And now they're doing more in business. More revenues. You can't do that with this company.
Well, and the problem I think that we keep seeing is that with these organizations, and because the revenue sources are so limited, which they're not, we named a few of them, right? But they are so dependent upon brands and sponsorship deals that, yes, you can increase that over time. You can get higher deals. You can get more brands to work with you. You can sign bigger people. There's a cost associated with that.
Yep. And
as you see here, yeah, they got more deals. They got $20 million more in deals. They raised revenues by $20 million more, whether that's just deals or whether that's, the products as well that they sell. But there's a cost associated, and those general and admin went up, and all that's included in their travel, everything else that's included, right?
Yep.
Also went up by over 20 million. So they made more money, but their expenses went up by just as much. And so what happened? They lost just as much. And so there becomes a point of diminishing returns, I think, where the answer isn't always just hire more people to fix this problem. And I think that's where you see situations like with Twitter, now X, with Elon, like comes in and fires everybody. And everybody wonders why. Why did he come in and just fire everybody?
Bloat.
Exactly. He realized there's not a need to have all these people here eating money.
Yep.
Twitter has this same exact problem. Twitter's losing money just like this year over year, same way. That's why he bought it, and that's why he's making these drastic changes, because he's looking at numbers just like this, Elon is, and saying, this isn't going to work. We can't keep doing this. How do we stop? Well, we go to this line item, 59 million, and we cut it in half.
Attack it, yeah.
How do we do that? Well, salaries is a huge part of that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So he cuts people out. But I guess my point is just that the answer isn't always to scale up. And if you're already losing money the way you're doing things, scaling that up bigger isn't always the answer. Now, we're not involved with a public company and we don't work with any. And so we're talking from our opinion and the way we see things.
We also don't own shares in Faze, by the way. So neither of us have an investment in Faze.
And I'll just say this too. This report that you guys are looking on the screen right now looks very simple because there's a lot of things lumped into these categories. Mm-hmm. This is very detailed and there's a lot of different costs in here. We're talking about it pretty simplified to try to make it make sense for you guys. But Yeah, there's a lot to this. So it's not just as simple as we're making it seem.
I scrolled up to the balance sheet really quick just to show, and it's very difficult to see, and I understand that. I don't expect everybody to like actually look deep dive into this, but you can tell with the equity section, I can't hover over it, but the equity section down at the bottom, there's a line that says additional paid in capital, and that takes a massive jump from 2021 to 2022, and that is basically where people have brought their own money in to remedy this situation, and it's 150 mil.
Right.
Again, if you're running a loss of $50 million a year, that's a 3-year time frame. That's a 3-year window. That is not a lot of time. And then what happens then? You do the same thing again. Another venture capital firm comes in, big influx of money, and they want an ownership percentage, something like that. And, you know, there's that aspect, and then there's the aspect that you said. They all bring their separate ideas, and one of the ideas this time was literally to start hiring celebrities. Like, FaZe Clan has just been going out and getting deals with all these celebrities, and it has rubbed everybody, including the previous owners, the wrong way. Right. And some people enjoy it. I mean, that's fine. I don't care one way or another, but you can't just you can't fix the issue by just bringing in, he says Snoop Dogg. Yeah, Snoop Dogg is one of them. I mean, that's exactly. A perfect example. It's like, what is Snoop Dogg actually going to do? Like, yeah, that's more eyes on FaZe Clan, but you can only monetize that so far. And how much is that going to cost to get Snoop Dogg to be a part of it?
What does he have to do with the gaming aspect of it, and how much is he actually going to increase sales?
Yeah. And
it's just another cost.
Yeah, is Snoop Dogg a gamer? Yeah, sure, maybe. But that doesn't, like, that's not going to fix the situation. It's not, impressions do run the world to an extent, but that's assuming you can monetize them. And FaZe can't right now. They can't do it fast enough to make up these losses. Yeah. That's kind of it on FaZe. That was the main thing I wanted to talk about on FaZe. I mean,
we could break all this apart and get super detailed. You guys we would probably lose you about 5 minutes in. So we wanted to keep it kind of high level here.
You want to hit the button and go back,
sure.
And we can briefly discuss. If you want to move on to Sentinels, we don't have to. It's up to you. Do you want to talk through that, because it's a similar issue? It's just on a smaller scale.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, I think. We don't have to specifically. I think the point here was that we wanted to show is basically just with Sentinels coming out. You know, we talked about this on our news section. I think it was either last podcast or two ago. That they basically came out and said, we are losing money at a rapid rate, and we can't sustain this for maybe 2 or 3 more months.
And Sentinels is a very high-performing esports org. I think this caught a lot of people off guard because of that. They're like, you look at these orgs, and you're like, dude, they're winning. Like, there's no way they're losing money. And they're not just losing money. They're losing it hand over fist. Yeah. I mean...
Yeah, and so basically they came out and said they were going to try to raise capital, and it's basically a situation identical to what we just looked at with FaZe. It is a company that is paying so much money in salaries, not just to players and creators, but to general and admin people that are running the company as well. You got travel, you got all these other expenses associated with running it, just keeping it going. And the money coming in just doesn't sustain it. And I don't know.
It's not even close.
That report right there that you printed, and you can just show, that's the Sentinels package we printed out. It's like 70 pages of financials that
79.
That we skimmed through. But I mean, I don't think there's a point to dive in. I think the main topic here is just, we talked a whole episode on esports orgs and why they don't work. And the ultimate thing is the brand deals and the sponsorships these teams are getting, these orgs are getting, don't outweigh the cost. I think it's inflated salaries mainly driving it. People argue other things that are driving it, but
inflated salaries for sure, because it's mainly a service-based business. And that's going to be the number one place you look.
Teams, I'm pretty sure the League of Legends teams, and I think this is for CS as well, or maybe Valorant. I mean, they're paying like $1 million salaries for one player.
Yep,
$1 million for one player. Yep. And then now there's a 4-player team, or Valorant's a 5-player team. It's like,
and you may say, listen, this here's the topic. You know, you hear that and you talk about one of those players and you think of who's the best League of Legends player and how much would you pay them? And somebody off the street is going to say, well, based on how much I know other players get, this person has to make more than them, so it's 1.5 mil. And I say, is it worth it? And you're like, yeah, I mean, this guy, incredible. They're going to win, based off him alone. I'm like, no, is it worth it? Because how much are they going to win in tournament winnings? Like, if they won every tournament, would that pay for not only him, but he has to have his teammates as well? Yeah. Is it going to pay for that? That's what I mean when I say, is he or she worth it? Because, you can say, oh, this and that, they're this great, they're this good. That doesn't matter. Right. Like, you can only run a loss so long. And we've talked about this with Activision in the Call of Duty League, is like, this ain't going to keep happening. Yeah. Like Activision, people aren't going to, especially big organizations, they're not going to keep losing money like this.
Right. Well, and I think that's what you saw back in whatever it was, I think 2019, maybe 2020, when Tfue came out with the contract with Faze, and it was, the whole thing, he was going to try to sue him because it was like 80-20 or whatever. I don't even remember the numbers. They were taking a big cut, but it's like because of reasons like this, they have to. They're trying to pull money anywhere they can, even if it is from their teams, from their creators that they're paying, because otherwise they're not seeing any of that revenue. And that's where, people would say, well, Tfue in this case is like entitled to that. He earned it, whatever. But Faze is sitting there saying, well, like, he's wearing our name on all his stuff, and we need a cut of that to survive.
Well, that's why you need an agent to look over those contracts.
Exactly.
And also, that's the chicken and the egg, right? It's like, if you put the Faze logo on this podcast right here, are we doing more numbers? Like, yeah, maybe. But why would Faze do that when we're not doing big numbers, right? Faze doesn't care about us. They're not going to sign us because we're not doing big numbers. But then when we are doing big numbers, why would we take their logo when we're already doing big numbers? It just doesn't, like, if you think about it, why would anybody ever join an org unless it was purely for a competitive reason, right? When you know you're going to have a consistent player base, a consistent team that you can get on with and play and win. Yeah, that would be the reason for an org, and even then, you're probably not gonna. But when you start getting into merchandise and all these other things, like, most orgs are losing money because they can't keep up with the fact that now they have to pay these players so much. It's almost a blessing and a curse. These players are, now you're winning a lot. You got to pay the players more. Yeah. But you can't afford to, because the tournament, the purse, the winnings, it's just not good enough.
100%. I mean, I really do think,
especially when Activision's on the other end demanding a $25 million buy-in, and literally, I mean, that alone, like, you can't win just based on that.
I think that, and I tweeted about this before as far as the salaries piece, but I think that, there's multiple issues in the esports space talking about, why it doesn't work. Yeah. And, some people talk about, well, there's not enough storylines behind it. There's not enough, reason for people to watch. But I think originally it started by these teams just paying way too much money for not enough in return. And to your point, why would they do it? Well, a lot of people, these big companies that have a lot of money, these big, these owners of actual, traditional sports teams, they just heard the buzz about it and just, let me put 10 million over here. Let me put 20 million over here. Let me fund $1 million to this each year and see what happens. Yeah. They didn't really know. And so these companies, these LLCs, these private LLCs that, that run these orgs, the back end of these orgs, they started getting this funding, and they're like, oh, we should be a part of the CDL. We should buy into this. And then, oh, okay, like you said, what are salaries? Oh, 250K, 300K. Okay, let's start paying these people. And not thinking that, is it worth it? No one ever asked that question. Is this going to be worth it? When, just to name one, the Florida Mutineers, when they're paying 100K per person, 400K, salaries, and they don't win a single event, or maybe they win one small tournament and it's like 20K. Yeah. How does he get paid for? Like, how are they paying these players? So it just doesn't make sense.
There are always, I say this and say the CDL in its current state isn't going to work, and it's the same with the Overwatch League or anything else. As long as it's bleeding money every year, it's not going to continue to work. There will always be some dumb venture capital firm that'll come in and think they can fix it,
dump cash
into it, and it'll continue this way, the way it's always continued, because this is not a new problem.
It's not sustainable, man.
It's not sustainable, and this is nothing new. Like, this has been happening for years now, and there will always
the people who are in the space, like truly in the space, they know what's going on. I named one, like Adam Apicella. He's been in the space a long, long time. Esports Engine, formerly at Esports Engine. He knows. I see him tweets about this stuff all the time, and he knows the problems behind it. Those aren't the people putting the money into it. Those are the people like trying their hardest because they have passion for the industry to fix it. The people with the money, they have no clue.
Yeah. And to be completely clear, I have passion for the industry. I want to see it successful. I would love to see nothing more than a league that is thriving, producing a profit, because profit is proof of concept. Right. If you're making a profit, then that means, you're able to pull the viewership that warrants it. The NFL prints money every year. And it's because people enjoy it. People want to watch it. I think it's the same with esports, but the way it's monetized currently is not sustainable.
Right.
And J-Man put in here, Valorant is doing good. I need numbers, J-Man. Don't just comment in here and put Valorant is doing good. You sound like every other bot that says like,
No, what I'll say to that is what he's probably saying is there's buzz around the space right now.
Yeah.
And the esports league has eyes on it. And that's great and all. But what about when they're paying these $1 million salaries for their teams? What about when the eyes kind of go away?
Yeah.
Because it will.
Yeah.
It will. When Valorant's been out 3 or 4 years, there'll be a whole league, ESL tournaments, all this stuff. And the salaries aren't going to go down because what do salaries do? They go up.
They're only going to go up.
They only go up. So then the next best player, you got to pay $2 million for him. You got to pay $4 million for him. But then what happens when the eyes start going away from it? It's like it's not sustainable. And these orgs that maybe were barely breaking a profit when there was an interest in the space, now they're all losing money, and then the same thing will happen again and again. So it's something we could talk about forever. I mean, we did have a whole episode on esports orgs, and I think we covered a lot of this same stuff there. Main thing we wanted to cover with Faze and just talking about Sentinels is that people have a public image of these brands and these companies, and they maybe even hear numbers like, oh, they did $70 million in sales last year.
Yeah.
And to most people, $70 million, and that's money they'll never see. They don't understand it. They don't understand how far that even goes.
Yeah.
What we wanted to do today is kind of illuminate what the back end looks like. What does it cost to make $70 million?
You made 70, but what did that cost you to get there?
How did you get to that point? Yeah, who's actually keeping the money? Is there any money to keep? What does the debt look like? We looked at that. And so I think that was kind of our goal here, and just to kind of show that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and all this Faze stuff you see online from, Rain and Banks and these guys and the fallings out. There's net effects of this on the back end, and there's a reason they feel the way they feel.
I'll tell you this too, to go even further, when money gets tight and you've run losses year over year, all of a sudden, a lot of these people ain't the same people you maybe grew up watching. All of a sudden, it's not as much fun. These people are complaining about things because stuff's not getting done, and there's a different way of doing things. And
tell me this. So I have a good question for you that may help some of the audience listening that they may not understand, because we're talking at a little bit of a high level right now. When you say public company and you say stocks, right? You can buy stocks in a public company. What does it mean for keep it super base level here? What does it mean if you buy stocks in, let's call it Faze, when it's valued at $700 million? What happens if you buy, let's say, 1,000 shares,
right? Or
you own $1,000 worth of stock and it's valued at $7 million, and then now the market cap's currently at $23 million? What happens? Explain that to someone that doesn't understand it all.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Faze, their initial public offering, when they first went public, it was roughly $10 a share. No, I don't think it was exactly. It was like $9 and something, but it was roughly 10. And so $1,000 worth of that stock, you would have bought 100 shares at $10 a share. And when you own 100 shares, that means you own a percentage of the company. And let's say in total they had 1 million shares outstanding.
I think it says here December 21st of 2020, December 31st of 2022, 3,545,000 shares.
Yeah.
So just
outstanding. So that means there's 3.5 million out there that other people own randomly. I mean,
and you own 100.
You could go on Robinhood right now and buy Faze stock if you wanted some. So there's 3.5 million out there. We bought $1,000 worth when it IPO'd, initial public offering.
We didn't.
At 10. We didn't. And we're saying if hypothetically.
Yeah.
And so now I own 100 shares of the 3.5 million sitting out there. And every year, if the company was making money, let's say they made $1,000, you divide the $1,000 by 3.5 million people, right? And that's how many that's the earnings per person.
It would have gone up. Your value and your stock would have gone up. Would have gone up much,
right? Approximately,
$10 a share, it's worth 10.1000.
Approximately, yeah. So over time, assuming income is going up, or at least let's say it's staying
the
literally,
company is going
the value is going to go up with it. Now the opposite side of that coin is revenues are going down. We just went over how much money they're losing hand over fist. So when we bought it at $10 a share and we bought $1,000 worth, we had 100 shares. We still have 100 shares now today. But those 100 shares are not worth $1,000.
What did you say when you looked at it, when you pulled it up? 31 cents?
31 cents. So
from $10 to 31 cents.
If we had 100 shares at 31 cents. Our stock is now, it was 1,000 when we bought it. It's now worth $31.
Yep.
And that's a very, very drastic decline. In fact, the NASDAQ, they require, I think you have to have your share price has to be over $1 for it to be listed.
Over like 3 month period.
It's yeah. And then you get a delisting warning, which means NASDAQ is going to delist your stock so that it's not actually publicly tradable. You have to go and buy it on penny stocks or OTC, over the counter.
So the reason I ask you that is because I think there's a lot of our creators out there and probably a lot of people in the space that do understand that. They understand maybe they have a Robinhood account or whatever, and they don't understand how to buy stocks and what it means if it goes up in value or not. The reason I wanted you to explain that is because you brought a point up of these older, call them Faze Ring, call them banks, these guys who originally started and they have stocks in the company, right? They have ownership shares in the company. And the company's worth X number of dollars. They technically have rights to whatever. Let's say if it was the $10 a share and they have 250,000 shares or something like that, right? So they're entitled to 2.5 million valued in the company or something like that. And then year over year, it starts tanking and starts going down. That reason that you just explained on how it kind of works is why you start seeing people getting their feathers ruffled, because now they're saying, hold on now, you're messing with my money, because before.
And you start blaming those corporate people that you brought in that were supposed to help. And now
fix the problem.
Yeah, now you start blaming management, saying like, you're killing my stock.
Maybe you didn't change any stock. You have the same amount of stock in the company, but the value is just dropping so drastically that now where you felt like you were worth $10 million, let's say, now you only have a couple $100,000, and then you don't even work with them anymore. So now you're looking around pretty quickly. And so that's the reason I bring it up, is because I think a lot of the public turmoil you see really does affect the numbers. And as you said at the beginning of the episode, the numbers don't lie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all tied together. And honestly, when it comes to financial stuff like that and people looking at those things, now a lot of those creators still have a big name without being attached to Faze. A lot of these people have...
There's a personal brand.
There's a personal brand to it,
sure.
So they're going to be fine. But at the same time, these are people who put their life and everything into it. And, I hate to say this, but in a way they sold their soul, like once they decided to go public and everything like that. And they may have had to, based on they were already losing money. Mm-hmm. Once you go public, you're forfeiting your right to management. This happened, what was it, G2? Yep. What was the owner of G2? Got kicked out of his own org because he sold his soul in essence. Once you do that, you don't have any control. And when you don't, you look at this thing that you built and all of a sudden it's not what it used to be. And I think that really, really, it hurts.
Yeah, and I think, to just your point that you made earlier, I don't think that enough people really understand how it really works on the back end. And so while there may be a lot of bloat, while there may be a lot of people there that they don't need, I'm sure there is a lot of people on the back end that are trying to solve this. We're looking at these numbers as a third party.
Yeah.
They are looking at these numbers every single day and trying to fix these problems. And we're not by any means saying that, Faze is over and done. I doubt that it is, but it is just interesting as you see, 1 year you're hearing hundreds of millions of dollars valuation. The next year you're seeing it's quite a bit less substantial than that.
Yeah. What was the valuation? What did it drop to in total? I think it was like, what did I tell you before?
The market cap is like 23 million.
Yeah, you could buy all of Faze for 23 mil.
Interesting enough, talking about back to the CDL, the company that owns the Toronto Ultra, which is a CDL team, for those of you guys who don't know, I think the market cap on it was like, I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure when I looked at it, they were in talks of like buying players out, doing different stuff. I think their total market cap at the time was like 10 million or something. And we all know that they owe the CDL like $25 million. And then they were talking about paying these players, hundreds of thousands of dollars each for this next season. And
because they had a good season.
Yeah, and we were all just looking at it, and I was looking at the thing, and people were saying, why are they dropping these players? Why are they doing this? Because people were saying basically they were having money issues. And I literally just went and looked up the company on Yahoo Finance and see what it is. And I'm like, this is why, guys.
Yeah.
Like, this is why, because they don't have the cash. Like,
the numbers tell a story. They say money isn't everything, but it's
business.
I was about to say, it's pretty damn important. Like, I mean, when you look at the numbers, we just told a story with Faze, and I could look at it and tell you exactly, like, year over year, this is exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. Just based on what the numbers are. I don't need, this. It's interesting. The reason I printed this was because, in all of this, I told you this, there's 2 pages that matter. All this is just like, there's some corporate governance stuff in here that you want to like read into and see, because that tells a story too, and kind of tells you what their aim is here. But really, if you look at the numbers, bro, they ran a $6 million loss in 21, and $8 million loss, or 8.5 in 22.
Yep.
They're losing money. That's why and if you look at anybody who's raising money anyway, the reason they're doing it is because they can't, quite frankly, they can't sustain it. And quite frankly, it speaks to they don't know what they're doing, because profit is proof of concept. If you can't make money, they're looking for somebody who can actually come in, but they don't want to look for somebody. That's why they made this a public round of investment right here, by the way.
Right.
They want a bunch of individual investors to come in.
Because none of those people are going to actually step on their toes and try to run it.
Tell them how to do things.
To run it.
Even though somebody needs to tell them how to run things. Yeah. Quite frankly, a lot of orgs, if profit was the only thing and you remove the passion aspect from it, every org would shut down.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, man.
Outside of maybe 100 Thieves, maybe, and their merch has to be. I don't know, because they're not publicly traded.
They would get out of esports entirely. They would just sell merch.
Yeah.
They would just sell merch, and then they would do fine.
I was about to say, yeah. Ironically, they'd make more money, or at least more profit. But
they probably have about 5 or 10 people who ran all their product department, their development, all that stuff, and Nate Shaw would tell them what to do, and they would pay for their product, and they'd sell their product at a profit, and they'd make money.
Yep.
It's the esports side that hurts it. So, anyways, I mean, we could ramble about this all day. I think we kind of covered it. Any questions about any of this stuff, please drop them in the comments. We love to talk about this stuff, and I think too many people, especially coming into the scene, just don't know how it works. And they hear these orgs and they think Faze, trying to go for Faze recruitment or these things all are just like the epitome. And I don't think it always is. And so,
did you see, completely random, did you see G1 hasn't paid their people?
I
don't know if you see on Twitter.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
That's probably the worst case scenario of like an org not making money, and then
they truly can't afford to even pay people.
Yeah, the outstanding payments aren't being paid, and that sucks, because it sounds like in that situation, this all coming to light when it did, that's a situation where communication was also really bad. Like if any org came out and said, look, running tight, we're gonna have to let people go. But instead, in this case, instead of letting anybody go, they just kept going and just didn't pay them. And it's like, how long can we get away with this?
That's what happened with the guard, right? Back in earlier in the year with LAG in the guard. And it's like they just completely dropped everybody at once. But you would rather them see that than have stayed alive throughout the year and then be like, well, we can't pay any of you guys.
Yeah,
because then
you did all this work, but
then you're messing with people's actual financial and like their personal and how they're able to like live their life. So
it's a sad situation. Yeah, you bring up the best point of like everybody looked at what the guard did, and it's like obviously negative. It really sucks, because they had just, we had a content creator, they had just signed, the person had got an apartment complex out there, and then literally not 2 weeks later got cut, and they had just got an apartment and all these things. That sucks. But then you look at it and it's like G1 kind of did the opposite, and ironically their name is Gamers First.
Yeah.
It's a tough scene, and you hate to see it. I'm not harping on G1 or anything like that, because quite frankly, like the org itself, I was a fan of like the org and everything that they had going for them. It's just,
we understand how it can happen.
Yeah. When it comes to the money, like you've got to make sure that's right. Sadly enough, the money is everything in a way, because if that's not right, everything else is downhill.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And I think you are going to see a trend start to happen with these creator-led orgs. You've seen it with Moist Critical and Moist Esports. Like, they are actually making money, which is insane. Like, Moist has talked about it a good bit, but it's because they are dragging their personal brand to fund the esports team. And again, what is that? That's passion. That's passion driven. They're only able to do it because of their personal brand and their identity around that. They're dragging people into the scene because of who they are, not because of the scene itself. And so it's kind of backing into it, and it's actually working. And I think you'll see that more if enough people want to do it. I think you might see, like, take Scump, for example, right? Scump, now he's retired from COD.
Yep.
He's going to grow his stream. He's going to become a huge creator. He already is a huge creator, but he's going to even grow even more. And then imagine him going to buy a league team.
Yeah.
It would do great, because his whole fan base and all is going to flock, and then it actually grows. So I think there is worlds where that stuff starts to work.
You just can't add the bloat.
Yeah.
Like once you get to that point, you just can't add all the overhead that a lot of these orgs, I think a lot of it is the excitement of having a new business and a new thing. And so you just, we've got to have this staff and that staff and this and that. And honestly, until things change, you really, like, the best way to do it is to bootstrap it and just build it off of passion. You know, Moist knows how to do it. He doesn't need an entire staff of this and that. He just needs him and his vision and what he wants to do. Same for, like you said, Scump could do it. And ironically, that's what Nate Shot has done with 100 Thieves so far. And that's probably why they're one of, if I had to guess, I don't know their financials, but they're probably one of the more successful ones.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is, ironically, they lost $2.5 million last year in with their COD team.
Yep.
So
and they're good.
Yeah,
they're not even a bad team. They're a good team. So yeah, I mean,
you're going to continue to see the trend. I don't think this is anything shocking. We're going to continue to see orgs shut down. We're going to continue to see stuff like the Sentinels come out and say, "Look, we can't make this work." It sucks, but I don't think esports is dying by any means. I think it will continue to be around. I just think there's going to be a large restructure on how the actual leagues are structured, more maybe creator led, more player led, maybe some player what's the word I'm thinking of, like union structures to where they can actually, you know, develop minimums and stuff like that. And then just these orgs are going to have to figure out a way to not be paying more than they are making.
Yeah.
Simple.
Ironically, the orgs are the middlemen in this case, and this is an industry that can't afford a middleman right now. So there's...
What do I always say? Why do you think Optic Hex is always saying content first, content first, content first? Because he understands there's no way we can make money unless we are bringing in the sponsorships. And how do we do that?
And ironically, I see more of their sponsorships than probably any other. Like when I get on Twitter, I see, what is it, Shotzi and Dashy is Milk, Wingstop, Oakley. Yep. I mean, I could name theirs because I see them so often, and that
because they're doing it, and they're one of the ones that's surviving because of it.
Yep.
So, anyways, I think we can end it there. Unless you have anything else you want to add in.
No, I don't think I have anything. This has been a fun episode because getting into the numbers of, you know, there's always like, oh, Faze is losing money. You see a Deserto article or something like that. Faze stock price down to this amount, but nobody knows why. And when you look at the actual numbers of it, this is why. Like, there's nothing else. There is no other, like, oh, it's because of this or because, no, it's strictly the numbers. Like when you talk about Wall Street and you talk about publicly traded stocks, this is why. Like the financials that we laid out, it's not pretty, it's not sexy, it's not fun. This is why. It's just the money. That's all it is. Yep. If you keep losing money, your stock price is going to continue dropping. It doesn't matter how many impressions you get, which is funny because that's listed in the report of what their YouTube subscriber count is across everything. They have all these analytics. And like I said, you've got a 79-page document. None of this matters when you're running an $8.5 million loss like Sentinels. So that's it. We could honestly do this again if there's another org. I think we should. I think the idea came from Jake Lucky and Hunter doing this on a show. And funny enough, I was in chat and I was actually able to talk through some of it with them, and that was a lot of fun.
I will say this. So we have the access to Faze's stuff because they are publicly traded.
Yeah.
Sentinel stuff was required to put that out, even though they're not publicly traded, because they were trying to raise capital. So that's why we have access to those.
Anybody can have access. And in fact, in YouTube, we can put it in the show notes if you want to see the links to any of this information.
Look at it,
You can even go invest if you want to.
Send them some cash.
Send them some cash.
There for...
all this is public. As we get public information, when it comes to business and stuff like that, especially because of my license, I'm not going to report on stuff that is speculative or anything that would have to do with a client or a potential client. I'm not going to talk about other people's financials. This information is public, so we do want to put that disclaimer out there.
Definitely. Anybody can go see it.
What else you got? Like, is that it?
I think that's it. I think we can close it down here. We appreciate you guys watching, tuning in. Like, subscribe. We're trying to keep the content coming. So,
like and subscribe on YouTube. We appreciate you coming through. Drop a comment if you have any other topics in the future. And never mind, I certainly appreciate the DM on Twitter about the topic. So glad we could discuss that.
All right,
appreciate it.